Well, hey guys. As you know, I'm the audio tech at Church of the Rock, and this goes to our online church, but it actually goes to a lot of other things as well. It goes to our archive, it goes to the TVs in the hallway, it goes to what we use for our TV broadcast, and what we use for our on-demand audio, like podcasting and such. Basically anything that leaves our building is mixed through this, and it's all mixed live. I'll be giving you my monitor mix, which is what I'm listening to, and it will go up and down in volume, and that's actually on purpose because I'd like you to hear what I'm doing, and there's times where I intentionally turn it up or down just so I can hear it in a different way and to try to dial in my mix. So if you hear that going up and down, that is on purpose. So, alright, without ado, here we go. So this was shot on a Saturday service, and so the band usually gets there at 3:30, so I always like myself and my audio techs to get there at least an hour early, so like 2:30 p.m. And so yeah, first thing you do, of course, take the cover off the mixer, fire it up, that's the Yamaha CL1. Turn on the solid state recorder, which also sends audio to the network when you press stop. It's off screen, but there's a little powered speaker to turn on to hear the ambient stage mic to help hear the band when they're not on mic. Turn on the TV and make sure it's switched to the channel that has the I Have God camera and all the other camera feeds. The countdown will show up on there as well. So then yeah, log into the computer that's there. But yeah, first thing I like to do is get myself prepared. So I open up Planning Center online, and I like to take a look first at the order of service. Now, I would have normally looked at this throughout the week as well, but if you're, say, volunteering and you haven't had a chance yet, then it's good to at least take this time now, go over the order of the service, go over the band and the pastors, the times that even the band is arriving, which is usually pretty consistent, but that should all be there. But then what I like to do is to listen through them. So first you got to turn on the monitors, which I should have done earlier. And then I start to critically listen to the songs. The first thing you're doing is just trying to get to know the songs, know where the parts are, know the distinct elements in it. Now notice I'm on scene 001, which is called Start Point. And this scene we know is ready with all the routing that goes to all the places that needs to go, specifically for the weekend services. And it has a few other good things in it. So that's always where you want to start, and then from there you'll save your scenes later. So with critical listening too, I'm also listening for balance of instruments and vocals. I'm looking for effects, just how they even pan things, how many vocals there are even, and how they bounce those off each other. It also helps your ears get accustomed to the room and the speakers. So then we start sound checking people as they come in and as they are ready, and maybe as to be expected, bass is in first. So the gain is actually set from front of house, but I can set my own digital gain from the broadcast mixer, but now of course I'm going to do some EQing. So of course there's no magic EQ, but you're just trying to enhance or clean up what's already there, what's already present in the signal. And then of course you want to be very thoughtful with EQ. What do I want to try to achieve? Oh, and that is the Adagio for the sanitizing wipe. So yeah, I like to open up this Sennheiser Wireless Systems Manager. It allows us to look at all the wireless mics from anywhere on our network. This helps me be able to assist the front of house if someone's batteries are dying or if I notice interference. Basically, as instruments come in, I'm going to see what they sound like. I'm going to adjust EQs and compressions. I'm going to look at panning, and that's the kind of stuff we'll look at. So as the band is coming in, I wanted to go over just a few things that are like important concepts to broadcast mixing. So the first thing is that the way we're mixing here, everything is going out live. So if you make a mistake, if you're mixing, then people hear it from around the world, and that's always fun and exciting. But it is just showing the importance that to remember that you're live. You can't just try things. You want to do your best to rehearse well and get your scenes made well and really be dialed in so that there's less chance possible of some mistake during the whole service. And of course, because it's live, to 2-track mix, it's never probably going to be exactly perfect like a studio recording that's been mulled over for hours and hours and hours, but it's still good. You can still get a pretty good result if you're thoughtful and purposeful. Another thing to think about is the actual levels. So when you're mixing front of house, you're mixing in a sanctuary or other kind of room, you're mixing for the level in the room, whereas for broadcast mixing, you have to be very wary of your output meters. And it's very different than for front of house. For front of house, you're going to have a much more drastic difference between a spoken word and a full band, whereas with this, you're going to have a lot less. Just think about if you're watching, let's say, like an award show on TV, the band, when they play for like the musical interludes, is only slightly louder than the person talking, giving out the awards. And that's because people listening through it on TVs and other devices, and you don't want those big dramatic sound differences. So the way we've set it out with all of our routing and going to all of our different devices, we set it up so that when there's just a spoken word, we want the output level to be -9 dB. And if it's the full band, it's -6, maybe a touch more here and there, like -5, but not too much more. So you notice there's a very only slight difference between those two. So in this room with those speakers, it'll feel louder. It's one of those psychoacoustic things where if there's just one person talking almost as loud as a band, it feels a heck of a lot louder than just when the whole band is going with a slightly louder volume. So it's good to be alert and attentive and to be able to sound check things as they are. So sometimes you don't get a lot of time to dial in your EQ, so that's why a lot of that has to be done during the rehearsal. Now, I mentioned earlier listening to panning, and so what we do with panning is a bit of a combination of a couple things. First of all, since this is a live worship recording that's going to be accompanied by video, we tried to match the panning at least roughly to what's on stage. So if you have an electric guitarist on the far left of the stage, then the panning should be at least some degree to the left. If the piano is more to the right. And this is all going to be from the camera perspective, not stage perspective. And there is some variation in this. You still want overall to have a balanced mix left to right. You don't want it to be lopsided to one side. So if it doesn't perfectly match the stage, but sounds balanced, that's better than exactly matching the stage but being very unbalanced sounding. And also, for instance, certain things will always be dead centered because it sounds funny otherwise. So kick and bass and snare, lead vocal, pastors, spoken word things, those are always dead center. And now, of course, vocals are an interesting thing in and of themselves. One of the more trickier elements to get right. First of all, that singers will always get warmer as the rehearsal and service goes on. So even though we're not setting gain normally, it's good to remember that later on they're going to get louder. Also, it's important to dial in their EQ well, which I'm trying to do here. One little thing I do for vocals is sometimes I'll do a high shelf boost, even above what's normally around human hearing, and that's a bit of clarity. And then what I'm doing here is trying to get rid of some of the mids that are making it sound a bit muddy. So at this point, the sound check is done, and we're just about to start rehearsal. So we have a start point scene on the CL1, and it has all kind of the basic setups for the weekend in there, and included in that is the effect sends. And so then when I set up, I try to figure out the right amount of effects return. And of course, if I want to set up any special effects, different effects, I'll use a sends on fader for that.
Here, let's take a peek at it.
So I always do a short reverb on the vocals, an instrument reverb, a drum reverb, and sometimes I'll add in a few other things. Maybe on a slow song, a longer vocal reverb or a vocal delay. But somehow or another, there's no video of me actually putting the audience mics in. So we use 7 audience mics. They actually hang from the ceilings throughout our sanctuary. And the way I normally do it, we have an EQ that gets rid of some of the very low end, and then we put all 7 mics right to the 0 mark on the fader, and then we use the DCAs to control how much level we actually want to push into the house. That way we have a nice consistent way to measure. So there's different methods of building a mix from scratch. There's what they call top-down mixing, where you start with lead vocal, and maybe you'll then blend in some of the other vocals, or you'll do just the lead vocal and the bass and the kick. Bottom-up mixing is kind of similar. You might start with the kick and bass, get that level right, then add some rhythm elements into it, and then maybe the lead vocal, and then build everything around that. There's also just a simpler method, which what we use here, which is just kind of starting with a rough mix. So as you sound check, you're pushing faders in, and then just building the entire mix just as you go. And there's different strengths to each of these methods. This method's worked well for us. But usually the first song, you're having to really dial a lot of things in and really get things tweaked. It might sound a little rough for the first couple of minutes, and then you get all good. And somehow I didn't catch it on camera. Like I said, I missed some shots with some batteries dying or some edits. But I always will check the compression on all the sources I use it on in rehearsal when the people are actually a bit warmed up and kind of going, especially on vocals. And usually what we're aiming for is to get a moderate compression where it's just kind of squashing the loudest spots but without taking the life out of it. Alright, so this is a new song with a different lead singer. So every time, if you're at front of house at our church, you need to make a new scene when there's a different lead singer, because then you need to change what's going to all the monitors and in-ear systems for the band people. For the broadcast mix, you necessarily wouldn't have to, but I still find it very beneficial to make sure that, you know, the right lead singer is in the right DCA. And quite often the songs are very different to start with, so you can have a different instrument balance, different reverb sends. So I still like to and would recommend, especially for all my volunteers, that you would make a different scene every time there's a different lead singer. It really helps a lot. But you want to be very careful and very thoughtful when creating scenes and recalling scenes, because you can easily overwrite something or accidentally recall before you saved and lose something before saving it. So before you ever hit a recall or a save button, just stop for a second and really think it through. And this song is tricky because it actually has different lead singers for different parts, so you really have to be aware of that, even at which lyrics the song changes, so you can pull down that other person and push up the other person. And then it'll go back to the other singer here, so you gotta be ready for that. This is also why it's really important to rehearse, because there, even though it's a little bit light, and so it's good to know, okay, I need to push that a little bit further next time, so this is why rehearsal is important. So sometimes what I like to do is I like to cue the bass and the kick together, see how they're interacting with each other, if they're interfering with each other. And if so, I try to use like complementary EQ to try to clean that up a bit. So for example, I'll boost, I don't know, 60 hertz-ish in the kick and take that same EQ out of the bass. So I took this opportunity to save this scene. I think I was starting to feel happy with how that sounded, especially for the beginning of the song. Later on, I still do tweak it some more, but a good chance to get a scene saved there.
Okay, great.
So then I quickly recall the scene I need for the beginning of the service. I throw in all the mute groups. So we don't actually do a production meeting on the Saturday service. We just get together and pray. So this is from the Sunday service. And as tech producer, I'm going through and talking this over with the camera people and front of house people, visual people. Going through the, again, major instrument things and changes. Should be good. Okay, let me pray. Well, Lord, we just know you are good and you want these services to succeed, but succeed in the way that people know you better. So you can see this is just before the service. There's a minute 34 left. And so it's good to get ready, make sure everything is good to go. So you need to start the recorder. Then make sure the effects DCA is down, the lead vocal DCA is up, and then draw on the correct scene. Let's quickly go through and double check all the different channels that sort of matches the notes on Planning Center Online, what starts the songs, make sure nothing kind of went wrong. And then you'll be ready to go to unmute once we hit 0. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You notice how I unmute the mute groups?
What's going on Saturday night?
We want this level
Welcome
to
here.
be
That's what I'm calling
that
you
same
today. I'm
-9
calling you
level
Saturday
we
night.
want
You
for
know who
spoken
you are,
word.
'cause you're here and let's do it.
There we go. So yeah, I gotta get that FX DCA back in quickly. Don't forget about it. Sometimes I cue the audience mic, see what it's doing.
Deep down.
And you'll see I'm basically constantly mixing. There's almost not a moment where I'm not moving something.
You, Lord.
So in the transition between songs, I try to really listen to see, make sure the audience mics are at the right kind of level. Look at my notes again, what starts the song, make sure it's good.
Yeah, let's do this. Marching on.
So as this song comes to a close, you want to get ready for the next song. In this case, this is where it's a different lead singer, so we have a different scene. So you want to press up to get ready to the scene is ready, and then when the moment is right, press the recall button. And the moment is right when it's basically as quiet as it can get, so you don't hear that change in instrument volume. And as a sound guy, you want to be able to predict the future, so I know Derek is loud here. So I preemptively pull the faders down before the part. That's why rehearsal is so important. Not always reacting to situations, but actually preempting them. So the fader's in the right position before the spot hits, but not too much before, because then you cut off the thing in front of it. So now this is where you really need to be ready for a pastor to come up. Like before the song ends, you have that bottom fader bank open, and you start pushing in that handheld mic, getting ready to check its compressor, all that right as the song's happening.
Is it a glorious day being back Saturday night church? Woo-hoo!
This is where you want to get that -9 output level.
You know, the last time we met was March 14th.
With the
on a
compression at a
Saturday,
reasonable
just as
level. So
COVID
take a
was,
look here.
Running rampant in the world. And I am just
I'm adjusting the
so
threshold, I believe here.
thankful
Yep.
About the faithfulness of
To
our
try to
God,
get around
right? That He
8
is
decibels
good,
reduction
that
at
He is
peak,
constant,
somewhere
and
close to
He
that.
is forever. So just as we prepare to sing that song,
You still want some of that
just bring to
underscore
mind the
piano there,
particular battle or the
but not an
particular
excessive
struggle
amount of it.
that you are having at that time. Maybe bless you.
So yeah, unmute the
I
mute
feel
groups.
that.
And then recall the scene, because it's almost silent. You don't hear that fader move. And switching the vocals back again. So you really have to pay attention, be on, to get these spots to sound really good. Otherwise it can sound like a mess. And part of that is because people are trying to sing at home and worship, and if they don't know who to sing with or who's catching the melody, who's carrying the melody, that can be really difficult. We always remember there's a higher purpose. We are serving people, we're serving the Lord. So again, you want to be ready for the pastor to come back up. It's also good to always know the order of service, to know when that might be, but also be ready in case they surprise you.
Good night. Great to see you all. And now we're going to have a great message from
So you see, I
Pastor
bring in the audio for the video and pull down the pastor right away. It's really important to make sure those pastors' mics are down fairly quickly, to not pick up stray noises or even stray comments, and make sure that video fader is in before the video starts. And hopefully you would have gotten the level nailed down for the video at the rehearsal. And then it's important to bring in the pastor's mic in before he starts talking.
How is everybody doing tonight?
Try to get it really close to the correct level, that -9, right as soon as he starts. But sometimes this takes a little bit of tweaking.
Or the regular Saturday night people, and you're here. You know why? You love this service, right? Same with
The hope
me.
is to
I
get
like
this
it too.
dialed in
Kathy, who was saying to me
while
just
he's still
tonight,
doing
she
this little
says,
preamble,
"Are you disappointed
because
we'll go
for the
back to
broadcast
Saturday and
especially,
okay, you can't
we need that
have
level
it.
to stay
I love
constant
it.
for the
Glad to be
editor.
with you.
So for this
Well, you know, bow your
invitation,
heads and close your eyes, and
at the end, it's really important to
we're
be
gonna do
aware
two
of the
things
levels.
here.
Sometimes
First of all, there may be some people
the
that
pastor
have
speaks a
never
little
invited
quieter,
Christ into your
sometimes he
life.
needs a little bit of a boost. And then you
As
want the
your
audience
Lord and
mics to
Savior,
be able
we're
to
gonna
pick up
get
a
you
decent
this
amount of the people praying
Man, I bet
with
there's other people here,
the
with
salvation
every
prayer
eye
at the
closed
end.
and head bowed, and knowing that you care enough about me that you're willing to do anything and everything to give me life and life more abundantly. Help me discover the relationship revelation. In Jesus' name.
Now, because I've boosted these audience mics
give
so
the Lord a
much, I
big
actually have to
shout,
pull it down a
shall
bit
we?
for the applause. And then I try to minimize the effect of the pastor clapping right in front of their lav mic.
Have a great week.
But sometimes
I
that's
hope
hard to
you
get that
can,
quite right.
Really try to work.
And then it's important to, again, pull them down just basically right away as soon as he's done talking. But keep an eye out because sometimes they'll say a quick last word. And then push a little bit more audience mic back in. And stop the recorder. So sometimes I wait a minute or two just to make sure that all of a sudden there's not a pastor wanting to come back up to make some quick announcement or something. And then sometimes we have background music we put in. Even though this is a broadcast mix, sometimes this is feeding into overflow type of rooms. But that's basically it. That's how we run a service. Hope you enjoyed watching that. I'm going to go through the quick little closing what we do after this, but I'm glad you joined me for however much of this you enjoyed. Hope it helped. Hope you got some insight. And yeah, God bless you. Take care. So I just verified that this night we actually weren't needing the background music, so I pull that down. Then I can turn the speakers off. Again, always before you turn off the mixing board. I turn off the mixing board, which kills the feed. Turn off that powered speaker for the ambient mic on the stage. Grab the cover for the mixing board, put that back on. Turn off the TV. And then either log out or just turn off the screen for that computer. Most of the time I would log out. And that is that.